For 3 years, I worked double shifts, skipped vacations, and lived off grocery store salads. Also, my mother would never have to worry about rent. 3 full years. And then one Tuesday afternoon, while I was helping her clean out a closet, I found a manila folder tucked behind a stack of old shoeboxes. Inside that folder was a savings account statement. The balance? $62,000. My mouth went dry. My hands started shaking. Because I had been sending my mother $1,500 every single month for 36 months, while telling myself I couldn't afford to go to the dentist. But here's the part that broke something inside me that I'm not sure ever fully healed. That account wasn't in my mother's name alone. It was a joint account. With my sister Brianna. And the memo notes on every single transfer? House fund. B's house. Stay with me. Because what happened next, and what I finally decided to do, is something I've never told anyone the full story of. Until now. My name is Lacey. I'm 31 years old, and I grew up in a mid-sized town in Ohio, the kind of place where everybody knows your business, the church parking lot is always full on Sundays, and family first isn't just a saying. It's basically a religion. I'm the oldest of 2 daughters. My sister Brianna is 4 years younger than me, and from the very beginning of our lives, we were raised differently. Not in a subtle way either. In a way that everyone around us could see. Brianna was the pretty one. The one my mom dressed up and showed off. The one who got the birthday parties with store-bought cakes, while mine were homemade, which I actually didn't mind until I got old enough to understand what it meant. I was the responsible one. The steady one. The one my mother would look at with tired eyes and say, "Lacey, you just figure things out. You always do." And I did. I figured things out. I got a scholarship for college. I studied accounting. I got a job right out of school at a mid-sized firm in Columbus, and within 2 years I was making decent money. Not wealthy, but stable. Comfortable. Brianna, meanwhile, jumped from job to job. She'd waitress for a while, then quit. She tried real estate school twice and never finished. She had a series of boyfriends who never seemed to stick around. And every time Brianna hit a wall, my mother was right there to cushion the fall. I told myself that was fine. I told myself that's just how families work sometimes. Different kids need different things. I truly believed that. Then my mother called me in April 3.5 years ago and told me she'd gotten behind on rent. Her landlord had raised the rent, she said. Her fixed income wasn't stretching far enough. She didn't want to stress me out, she said. But she didn't know who else to call. I remember sitting in my car in the parking garage at work, still in my blazer, listening to her voice crack on the phone, and I didn't even hesitate. "How much do you need, Mom?" She said $1,500 would cover rent and utilities. I said, "Okay. I'll set up an automatic transfer." I didn't even go upstairs to run the numbers first. I just said yes, because that's what I did. I figured things out. I carried things. I showed up. That was the first transfer. It would not be the last. What people don't understand, what I didn't fully understand until much later, is how slowly you can drain yourself when you love someone. It's not like you write a check and feel empty. It's gradual. It's a vacation you don't take because you don't want to dip into savings. It's the work conference you skip because you can't afford the flights. It's the coat you need in November that you keep putting off buying because there's always something more pressing. For 3 years, I sent my mother $1,500 every month. That's $18,000 a year. $54,000 total. I told almost no one. My best friend Priya knew something was going on because she'd watch me order water at restaurants and brush it off with a laugh. My coworker Tasha noticed I'd stopped joining the team for happy hours. But I never said the full truth out loud because saying it out loud felt like complaining. And I had been raised to believe that complaining about helping family made you a bad person. My mother never asked how I was doing financially. Not once. But she called every Sunday. She'd chat about her garden, about what was happening at church, about Brianna's latest drama, a new apartment Brianna wanted, a trip Brianna was planning, whether Brianna should go back to school. I'd listen. I'd offer advice. Ida say, "Tel bripim city." I was, in every sense of the word, invisible. About 18 months in, I started noticing small things. My mother mentioned once that Brianna had been looking at houses in a neighborhood about 20 minutes from her. I thought that was funny. Brianna had never held a job long enough to save for a house. But I didn't say that. I just said, "Oh, that's exciting." Another time, Mom mentioned that Brianna had found a financial advisor who was helping her plan. Again, I thought it was strange. Brianna planning her finances? But I kept quiet. I was proud that my sister was maybe growing up. I didn't connect the dots. I should have. But I didn't want to because connecting the dots would have meant seeing something I wasn't ready to see about the people I loved most. It was a Tuesday. I had driven to my mother's apartment to help her clean out a hallway closet. She'd been complaining for weeks that it was overflowing and she needed help reorganizing. We spent about an hour pulling things out. Old photo albums. A broken lamp she swore she'd fix one day. A box of Brianna's old cheerleading trophies. Bags of fabric from a quilting phase my mother never followed through on. And then, way in the back, behind a stack of shoeboxes, I found a manila folder held shut with a rubber band. I almost didn't open it. I almost just handed it to my mom and moved on. But something stopped me. Some small, quiet instinct that had been whispering for months finally spoke up. I opened it. Inside were several pages. Bank statements. A joint savings account. The names at the top, Gloria Harmon and Brianna Harmon. I stood there in that hallway and read every single line. Monthly deposits. Regular, consistent, slightly irregular amounts, but averaging right around $1,500. The memo line on the first one said, House Fund. Then after that, B's House. Over and over again. 36 entries. My 36 transfers. Into a joint account with my sister. The total balance, $62,418. I felt the air go out of my lungs. My mother was in the kitchen, humming something, making us coffee. And I stood in that hallway with shaking hands and a folder that had just rewritten the last 3 years of my life. I thought about every Sunday I worked overtime. Every birthday dinner I declined because I was watching my budget. The Christmas I bought everyone gifts but told myself I didn't need anything. The dentist appointment I pushed off for 8 months. All of it had gone here. Into this folder. Into this account. Into a house for Brianna. I didn't cry right then. I was too shocked to cry. I quietly closed the folder, put it back exactly where I found it, and finished helping my mother clean the closet. I drank the coffee she made me. I hugged her goodbye. I drove home. And then I sat in my apartment and stared at the wall for a very long time. The first thing I did was nothing. Not because I was a pushover, but because I needed to be sure. I needed to think clearly. And I needed to stop the automatic transfer before I did anything else. I logged into my bank account that same night and canceled the recurring payment. Just like that. $1,500 a month gone. After 36 consecutive months of going out, it stopped. The next transfer was due in 4 days. It never went. Then I called Priya. I told her everything. The folder, the account, the balance, all of it. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. Then she said, very quietly, Lacey, that's your money. I knew that. But hearing someone else say it made it real in a way that I hadn't let it be until that moment. Over the next 2 weeks, I didn't confront my mother. I didn't call Brianna. I just watched. I watched how long it would take for either of them to notice. My mother called that Sunday, same as always. She talked about her garden. She talked about Brianna. She mentioned that Brianna had found a house she really loved in a neighborhood called Meadow Glen. She never mentioned the rent. She never said, hey, the transfer didn't come through. She never asked if I was okay. It took 11 days. 11 days before my mother called and said, in a carefully casual voice, that she seemed to be short on rent this month and was wondering if I'd maybe forgotten. I had not forgotten. I told her very calmly that I had not forgotten. That I had canceled the transfer on purpose. That I had found the folder in the closet. And that I needed her to explain to me what exactly had been happening for the last 3 years. The silence that followed was one of the longest of my life. Then my mother said, and I want you to hear this exactly, she said, Lacey, Brianna needs more help than you do. You've always been fine. 6 years of sacrifice. $54,000. And her explanation was, "You've always been fine." I told her I was glad she thought so. Then I told her I would not be sending any more money. I wished her well. And I hung up. Brianna called me the next day. I didn't answer. She texted. A lot. First it was defensive. "You don't know the whole story." Then it became guilt-tripping. "You're going to let mom struggle?" Then it got mean. "You always act like you're better than us." I read every message. I responded to none of them. My Aunt Renee, my mother's sister, called a week later. Apparently my mother had called her upset. Renee is the family's unofficial mediator, and I love her genuinely, so I picked up. I told her everything, calmly and completely. She went very quiet. Then she said, "Oh, Gloria, what did you do?" It turned out my aunt had no idea. She'd assumed, like everyone else in the family, that Brianna had been saving that money herself. She had no idea where it was coming from. When she found out it was my money, routed through my mother's hands into Brianna's house fund, she was horrified. Word spread through the family the way it always does, quietly and then all at once. My cousins started texting me. Not to guilt me. To apologize. Several of them told me they'd always noticed that I was the one who handled things while Brianna got handled. As for the house in Meadow Glen, Brianna didn't get it. She was about $12,000 short of what she needed after the mortgage pre-approval fell through. Without my transfers, the account stopped growing. And when my mother could no longer make her own rent without my help, some of that house fund money had to go back toward actual bills. I didn't feel victorious about that. I want to be clear. I don't celebrate my sister not getting what she wanted. But I will say that the version of justice I needed wasn't dramatic or loud. It was simply stopping. It was withdrawing the thing I was never supposed to give in the first place. I got a new apartment. A nicer one. I used 4 months of what used to be mom's rent money to finally fix my car, refill my savings account, and take a long weekend trip to Savannah with Priya, the first trip I'd taken in over 3 years. Sitting on that porch in Savannah with a glass of sweet tea, watching the sun set over the Spanish moss, I didn't feel like I had won anything. I just felt like I had finally stopped losing. Here's what I know now that I wish someone had told me years ago. Being dependable is a gift. But when the people around you treat your dependability as a resource to be harvested instead of a love to be honored, it stops being generosity and starts being something else entirely. You are not required to fund someone else's future while your own quietly falls apart. You are not fine just because you don't complain. And the most powerful thing you can do, sometimes more powerful than any confrontation, any argument, any dramatic moment, is simply stop. Stop sending the money. Stop answering the guilt. Stop shrinking yourself so someone else can grow. I didn't get an apology from my mother. Not a real one. I didn't get an explanation from Brianna that made any of this make sense. But I got something better. I got my own life back. And that, as it turns out, was worth more than $62,000. Now I want to hear from you. If you found out someone you loved had been doing something like this, would you confront them directly? Walk away quietly? Or do something completely different? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And if you're going through something like this yourself, if you're the one who always figures it out, always shows up, always sacrifices, I hope this story reminded you of something important. Being strong doesn't mean you have to do it alone forever. Thank you so much for watching. A new story goes up every single day, so if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time. I'll see you tomorrow.